Today we're gonna be doing a commentary over my 4000% blindfolded Telos kill. Unfortunately, this is not gonna be subtitle. I'm not gonna put subtitles in it because it's live commentary and it's a lot of work to put in subtitles after the fact for that. So apologies if you enjoy that, but those really only will apply to like edited, tightly edited videos and the like. But anyways, blindfolded PVM is, obviously very, very rough. And there's a lot of like ways for it to go wrong. And you also have like a ton of limitations in where you can move your mouse because you can't really rely on mouse movement because it's too granular and you can't really rely on that for blindfold stuff. You need something that's entirely like consistent the entire way through without any hassle whatsoever. So it's definitely it definitely forces a lot of creativity to work around those limitations to get around blindfolds. So the first thing that you may be thinking about is like, okay, so like how do you set up like a blindfold kill? So first up, I am using this blindfold. I bought it off of Amazon a couple of days ago, where I show it off right here. Basically, this is what I bought off Amazon right there, and it's pretty cheap, $10 for me right now. Uh, and it's completely like perfect for the job. Like there's no worry about this being like a see-through sort of deal. An easy way for you to tell whenever a blindfold is see-through or not is if you break out like a flashlight of a sort and try to like put it through here. You'll notice that even with like a flashlight right here, and then it's like you just like expose it and then you put it back, you can't see any light like bleed through it at all. This is the best way to tell if something is not see through at all. Because you can compare it to something like your clothes. If you bring your clothes up to like your eye, you can kind of tell that it's see through. Like you can kind of see through it. And sure enough, if you put like your 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 flashlight up to your shirt like this, you can see that like some parts of it will still like bleed through it. Like you can try this at home. No, I can't really show it off right here, but like you can see for yourself whenever or not like this is like a see-through thing or what, you know? So rest assured, this is completely legit. And also, side note, because of its size and all that, there's basically no way I can like peek through it because it's pretty big and like my eyes are like this big in general. Like it fits in very nicely within. So there is absolutely no fear about this being like a fake run whatsoever. In fact, in terms of blindfolded runs, there's actually quite a lot of ways to like kind of cheat in terms of blindfolded runs. So like we will talk about mouse keys later about like how that's the sound of mouse keys activating, by the way, where like mouse keys let you move like a set amount of distance. However, you can actually cheat pretty hard within this challenge, and there's something that I decided early on to not do at all because I felt like that it would have trivialized it way too much. So let's go over to something called Steam. Like, now you may be wondering, Steam? That's a store. That's that's just a place where you access other games. How could it let you cheat? Well, let me show you something. Let's go over to Steam Big Picture mode right here. Let's go to control settings. So currently, I have my Switch Pro controller, my Nintendo Switch Pro controller, plugged into my computer right now. Okay, let's go over to base configurations. Desktop configuration, basically, in short, it basically makes it so your controller can become a keyboard of its own, keyboard or mouse of its own. So like, this is just like random things I put in here, but like, you can do stuff like you can put arrow keys on the analog stick or the D-pad, or more importantly, relevant to this discussion, you can make it so when you press a button, your mouse jumps to a specific point on the screen. So right here, I have 4 different buttons that all that moves the cursor to a particular part of the screen. And this is customizable to the point where if you hold the button and then release it, it can return back to your original position, and or you can just make it just stay there forever. So we'll show it off right here. So like this is my Switch Pro controller. Look at my mouse right here. Notice how it's gonna jump when I press a button right here. So like I press a button right here, it jumps all the way to that raptor chest right there. You see? Now I press this button right here, and it will jump again to the right. See that? And then these two buttons, when I release the button, it will go back to that corner. So I press down this button right here, and then I'm hovering over the Constitution XP table right there. But when I release it, it goes back like that. And then all sorts of stuff like that. This is I consider insane cheating for blindfolded stuff. Even though, like, I'll show like a example right here for the hand cam. Like, I could put it right here and then reach out for it like here. Like, this is insane cheating. I would absolutely not do this at all. So do not do this if you're ever going to go for a blindfolded run. If you're going to go for a blindfolded run, if you ever do this, I will actually consider you like a cheater, and your blindfolded run will be null and void. That's my stance on it. So stuff like that, like, and obviously like stuff like macros, obviously not what I want to see in a blindfolded run. If you do any of that stuff, I would not respect your blindfolded run, personally speaking. But enough of that. Now, let's go into the actual main input of how to move the mouse whenever you're in a blindfolded RuneScape thing. So, in Windows, there's a built-in thing called mouse keys right here, where you can control your mouse with the keypad. So, like, if you have a 100% keyboard right here, this is the keypad area that you can use to like move the mouse around, right? So normally, if you just hold down the button, I'm gonna bring it back up. If you like hold down the button like this button right here, this will move the cursor to the left. It's slow. This is not ideal at all. However, there is a way to get around this. Look over right here. Look over right here. Hold the control key to speed up, and a shift key to slow down. The shift key is irrelevant here, but the control key right here is what we want. So if we hold on control, suddenly this gets a lot more reasonable. This travels across the screen much more quickly. And this is what we use to control the cursor, right? You see? Now, there are some, like, obvious limitations. Like, for example, you need to make sure that you're not going too fast, because if you go too fast, like, you're gonna skip across like certain things, like trying to reach this adrenaline crystal, gonna be nigh impossible. However, that being said, if you put it too slow, then it's gonna be harder for you to get from one end of the screen to the other end. So you have to like either like mash it very quickly like that, which is almost impossible to do when you're layering on top of other things, or just suck it up. In any case, you have to make sure that you're at like a perfect Goldilocks range where you're not too fast, but you're not too slow. For me, on a 1440p monitor, this is the speed I went with, 138. And from 1440p, I have interface scaling that goes up to 175%. And what I want to do here is that I want to zoom all the way. Also, one more thing, I also have like the camera system right there. And this will allow me to, just move my cursor around just like this in order to reach the things I want to reach in general. But that's not all with mouse keys. Mouse keys are a little quirky, and they're pretty weird overall. So, check this out. Now, if you move diagonally like this, it's whatever, right? What if I told you that the dedicated diagonal keys, which are like 7, 9, 3, and 1, those travel farther than just going cardinal directions by itself. So an easy way to demonstrate this is if we go to a corner to the top left right here. So we're going to hit one diagonal key right here, and then we're going to hit that and that. Notice how it still jumps to the corner like that. because cardinal directions like this travel shorter than diagonals. So that is one weird quirk of mouse keys that are a little bit odd. However, you can use that to your advantage by using a combination of diagonals and cardinal directions. So basically, if you were to try like just reach the enduring crystal like this, it's impossible. Even though it's like you just move one diagonally and then try to move all the way there, not possible. So instead, I do this: move two diagonally with two right clicks, and then I move one up diagonally, and then move right one more time, and then I do 6 more key presses right here, and then I can click on this basically, and then I can move on like that and go from there. And that basically makes it so these diagonals actually matter a lot in helping you get to where you need to perfectly. So like 1, 2, 3, 4. This hovers over the portal, but we're gonna backtrack again and we're gonna show it off just like how much those diagonals matter. So we're gonna go 1, 2. Oh, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can't reach it. Again, with diagonals 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a weird quirk of mouse keys that I'm not sure why it exists, but because of how it exists right now, it actually does allow me to get to that portal pretty well overall. So, mouse keys are a little bit quirky in that regard, and definitely something that you do have to get used to. But that being said, those diagonals being better than cardinal directions are like a huge part of mapping out where to move the mouse across the screen. So keep that in mind. But that's basically like the setup for blindfolded kills. Like we've gone over like the elements of like cheating that I think is not fit for blindfolded kill. We've got the input methods on how to move around the mouse using mouse keys and stuff like that. Let's go over the inventory next. So basically, this is my inventory for the blindfolded run. You basically best in slot person almost everything except for one exception. I replace Relentless 5 Crackling 4 with Clear-Headed 4 because I want to reduce as much like friction as possible with switches and the like, because blindfolded stuff is you kind of want to like have the easiest route forward. I will just camp Clear-Headed 4, so my anticipation will always be around 14 seconds, and that will protect me against volcanic golems in the fight on P4. And the only thing aside from that is just like, these are just like basic perks and stuff like that. Basic best in slot. The only other like interesting thing to say is that like I have all this range gear with Eldritch Crossbow, ELF, Dark Bow, and SGB. With the usual like Telos killing ELFs like Steady Swordhammer, Cutlass Staff. This is Staff of Light, but that wasn't used in the entire kill, so I don't know why I have it here. Either way, I use range for the entirety of P5 in order to wipe it out very, very quickly. But we'll get to that when we get to that. In the meanwhile, there's stuff like the Infernal Puzzle Box, which is an infinite adrenaline urn, where like you can see that I have 100% adrenaline, but when I bank it, I start losing my adrenaline right there. So it's a very nice thing to have for quality of life, and it sure beats out the adrenaline urn in terms of adrenaline preservation. And then, Vuln Bomb. I have Vuln Bomb set to the target version the default version where you press the button, and it will say like you don't have a target. And this is where you can just like use it for other things. So like you attack this thing, click it, and you automatically toss it. This is really, really good for this is like, really, really good for blindfolded kills, because that just makes it so you don't need to aim anything, and you can just keep your cursor or hover over wherever you need to next move towards, right? So have that there, so like you drag it over to your action bar, hit default instead of target, and then go from there. But that basically covers like the whole setup stuff. Oh, actually, I did forget about Onyx Kernel Pulse because, like, you need range stuff. I equip this instead of a rune pouch, and although that makes it so I don't save any runes whatsoever, I mean it's a worthy sacrifice in order to make sure I can actually range on P5, right? And but yeah, that basically covers like the generic like setup and stuff like that. It's basically just like taking the general magic setup, except you replace the power armor with Crypt Bloom and you add in a range preset. Also, a yak full of blubbers and Guthix rests sound interesting, but there's a big problem with that, and that is with how taking items out of yaks is all or nothing. So we're gonna summon a yak right here to demonstrate. So we're gonna fill this up with blubbers, right? Right? I'm sorry. We just fill it up with blubbers, right? Now, if we want to take food right here, like take beast of burden items, we can like set this to whatever thing. We can just like set this like a default thing right here, right? Like somewhere around here. We could do that, but here's a big problem with it. It's all or nothing. So like if you want to take it out, this happens. And if you want to equip your 2H weapon, then it gets in the way of that. So if you want to avoid that, you'll have to equip your 2H weapon first and then click on that in order to grab more food from your Beast of Burden, which is annoying, honestly, and not something I really want to do. So this is an option because, like, of course, when you're blindfolded, you can't see your adrenaline, and a good way to get around that is just simply using lossless healing, like Jellyfish or Guthix Rest. But even pushing aside the fact that I think no food kills a core, using a yak or mammoth to bypass that and just get lossless healing that way is just quite annoying to me, and I don't really care about that as much, honestly speaking. But yeah, that's basically that actually does cover what I wanted to go over in terms of the setup and stuff like that. So we'll go over the actual kill itself. So let's move over to the kill right here. So I'll be bringing up my actual kill on YouTube and play it back right here. So let's go. So right here at the start, I zoom out all the way. Again, I'm gonna show my camera settings right here where I have Freedom Classic and I zoom out all the way like this, like zoom out all the way after setting it to facing north all the time. And then I just have it bird's eye view like this, all zoomed all the way out like that. So that's the start of every single thing. And then I activate Grimoire right there, Alt 9, by pressing like Alt 9 right here with the keypad right here after turn off mouse keys. And then I move the cursor all the way to the corner right here. And then the movement I need in order to get to this crystal is, I'll demonstrate it right here. So you'll hear me count down. Oh, actually, let's just do this. Give me a second. So basically, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You'll hear me count down 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what that means is that like from here, I move my cursor all the way to the corner right there, and I move diagonally and cardinally twice. That's 1, and that's 2. And then I say 1 again. That moves it up by 1. And then I count up to 6. So that's 6 more presses right there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I click there. And then afterwards, I will say 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I say 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And that hovers me over the portal right there. And then I can click on that and then keep proceeding onwards. And then 1, 2, 3, 1. And then I say 1, 2, 3, and then 1. So like, 1, 2, 3, and 1. And then I'll be able to move over there. Again, because this is a diagonal, just moving in like a just moving in cardinal directions might be a little bit rough. In this case, it's fine, but this sets up other things for later. So this allows us to go click on that, and then we hit a keybind, like 1, in order to activate that. And then we do 1, 2, 3 in diagonal and down directions at once, and then move 1 by 1 right, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you can click on that, 2 hits like that, and then you just go on like that. Now, basically, that's basically like the gist of everything right there, and how that mouse movement works, and how it actually lines up with the kills itself. So let's proceed onwards and take a look at the rest. So right around here, you enter. Then we keep after we enter, then we move by 4 units, both cardinally and diagonally, and then I move 1 unit down, so my cursor ends up right here. But this part is also important. When I enter, I want to search as quickly as possible, and then like zoom in later on, and this allows me to click right here to move diagonally towards Telos, so I can then search towards him and start the fight that way. This will also have another like use later on, P1-ish. So, but we'll get to that later. So basically, at the start of the kill right here, you want to like search twice in a row to line yourself up perfectly, then zoom all the way in right here, and then click here right there. And then you do your devotion, and then surge into all that, and then do your rotation. Now, P1 here, and P2 for that matter, these were pretty not good. These were not like the kinds of kills that you really wanted to see in general, because these were pretty, these had a lot of mistakes. And so instead, right here, I'm gonna go bring up another thing where I show like a different kill right here that isn't that it didn't mess up as much. So let me go try to find it right here. I think this is it. Let me take a look right here. Yeah, this is fine. Okay, so basically, in this P1, compared to the actual kill I did, this is an actual P1 that you should actually kind of see in general. So you target cycle properly, apply your Thaddeus Warhammer, do multiple hits here. The most important thing here in P1 is to do a proper stun rotation. And PVMB does have a telestun guide that you can go read up to if you want more information about it. But basically, want to maximize the amount of... Oh, that's still the wrong one. Oh, that's not good. Okay, well, we'll go over this. But basically, for this P1, you want to maximize the amount of stuns you can get. So right around here, target cycle, attack, Thaddeus Warhammer, and then do all that stuff. You'll notice that I step back. This will come into play later, but in the meanwhile, I want to just like do good stun lock rotation here, where I'll impact right before you can auto, and then that pops his freedom, and then I can do a big asphyx to deep impact combo that makes him just not attack me at all whatsoever, which is super nice. And then I can clear tendrils using both Igneous Omnipower from a Zuck Cape and Tsunami at the same time. I'll have to tank 1 tendril hit using using Disrupting Shield, of which I can easily access right here by pressing F3 and then F2 rapidly in quick succession. And then afterwards, I can just like Greater Concentrated Blast after Tsunami, pop his freedom again, and then stun him again in order to get to the next phase. So these type of strategies are called normalized strategies, where you take the strategy that has the absolute least amount of risk and you go with that. You don't want to overextend, you don't want to underextend. You want to hit like a specific point that will almost always guarantee you'll be able to get to a specific point all the time. So P1 here, all the setup there allows me to end up in the same place all the time. I'll use the same abilities all the time right there and not deviate from it at all. Now, there are some exceptions. Like, for example, those that have done Telos before might be aware of something called flinching, where if you look back at this, you can notice how when I tag Telos with Greater Concentrated Blast, there's that period of time where Telos just like does nothing and he feels like that he's just immobilized for a little bit. This is called flinching because you attack him at like the first tick he's available, and that will make him pause. If you splash that first Greater Concentrated Blast, that will apply and he'll attack more quickly. When that happens, then I'm basically forced to give up one ability's worth of damage and just do the rest of the kill quicker that way. So, like, if I splash there, I have to improvise and do different abilities in different orders in order to compensate for that. And how I can tell with that is with sound cues, subtle sound cues that basically pinpoint to me, okay, he hit me here, I can afford to do it like that. But even then, even if I misjudge it, and I assume that he does the unfavorable outcome where I do splash, then the backup strategy will always ensure that I will still be able to clear tendrils using Omni Power and Tsunami, no problem whatsoever. So it's not that big of an issue there, either way. And then this gets me to the start of P2 with majority of the time 2 auto attacks until the first mechanic of P2. In this case, but in this case, I got one auto right here. In the kill I've gotten, in the actual kill I've gotten right here, I have actually ended with 0 autos going to P2, and that requires some more backup strategies that I had to come up with on the fly. But because like this is Telos and it's kind of like sequential and easy to like remember, at least for me anyways. I was able to more easily like devise a backup strategy in order to get around things. So it's like you can see a lot of like mistakes here where I wasn't able to stun him here again. So that ended up in a 0 auto P1, and that forced me to rethink how I do my P2 and just go from there, you know? So at the start of P2 here, the goal here is to do as much damage while drag him out of the black beam as much as possible. So again, this is a little bit like a unoptimal P2, so we'll go back to the actual optimal P2 here, where we actually show off what to do here. So we pop his freedom with both an ice blitz, rather, and then stun him with a 3-hit is fix, and then deep impact, and then 4-tick into an impact, and that causes him to get stunned quite a bit. And then we just go for it like that. Now, coming up next right here, you'll see that I intentionally delay my GCD by 1 tick and then use Devotion right here. Now, how long you need to delay this tick for to activate Devotion to have it go off perfectly depends if you face them within 0 or 3 autos, or if you face them within 1, or if you face them within 2. So, right here, since I phase them with 1 auto attack before the Onslaught spec, I can wait 1 tick. If I phase them with 2 autos until the Onslaught, I can wait 2 autos before I use Devotion and then go from there. And that perfectly blocks that perfectly blocks all like the hits right there. And then everything just goes off tick perfectly like that, and he's dragged out like that, and then you just do enough damage, stun him again, and then you do enough damage to get past P2. So, like, yeah. And then, once again, when we go to, like, the actual thing right here, because this is, like, a 0 auto until the Onslaught, I don't need to do any tick delay at all, so I can just keep using abilities right here, over and over again, and then use devotion, tick perfectly, just like that. But fortunately, this and P2 are like the only big places where things really went foobar. So that's good. So we'll move on to P3, right around here. Now, P3, you're blindfolded. There's no way you're able to take advantage of red beams at all. Don't even think about going near them. So instead, you'll have to employ an age-old strat where you just move Telos to the corner right here. So nothing can touch him right here. Like, even though the beam spawned here, like they could spawn right here or here, Telos will never get hit by the beam. So you're safe here, and you don't need to worry about it whatsoever. This is another DPS race. But P3 also has like another issue, adrenaline drains. Like, so take a look right here. I go from that to 22.5% adrenaline and then instantly down to 0. At 4K, that adrenaline drain will take you from full adrenaline to 0. Like, if you want to use your high adrenaline abilities, use it before that adrenaline drain. Now, the thing about P3 is that P3 actually has like a timer where the adrenaline drain always happens on. So like you can see that like normally whenever it happens at 4K, your prayer will just go down to 0. Although he was in the beam for a little bit there, so that kind of shot my assertion there. But like if we go around like right here to the P3. Oh, this one's also there. Never mind. Either way, is like you want to restore your prayer at the same tick as that adrenaline drain and prayer drain, so you don't get smited as well. Right there, you see. Otherwise, this is basically just using like the exact same DPS rotation over and over again to ensure that you always phase properly. Right. So like at the very start, you start with like corruption. You don't start with wall mat. You don't actually start with wall magic. Like even though I have 100%, I don't start with wall magic, and I'll get to more of that reasoning later on at the end of the phase. But I start with corruption. Like me not using wall magic here. This is completely intentional, even though I have it all. So you go through it all. You do the Sonic rotation again. You create a concentrated blast into Omnipower and then Tsunami. And then do that. G-Staff right before the Adrenaline Drain. And then restore your prayer on the same tick as the Adrenaline Drain. Again, it happens at the same time every time at the start of every P3 to that point. So, like, it's 100% predictable. There's no RNG in that. And then we proceed onwards with the DPS rotation to maximize our DPS as much as possible. Until this part, you may notice I use Rack here instead of Greater Concentrated Blast. Why did I use Rack instead of Greater Concentrated Blast? It's intentional, so I slow down my DPS. Because coming up next, after these two abilities, another Adrenaline Drain comes up, and that will take you down to 0. Or in this case, 26.1. But most of the time, it'll take you to 0. Here, if we use Greater Concentrated Blast over that Rack instead, we would phase them immediately right there. We would lose all of our adrenaline, and then we'll be a little bit more worse for wear in terms of adrenaline. Like, you'll be phasing the next time you use Greater Concentrated Blast, and your entry into P4 will be a lot rougher in general. Now, that being said, this is where Tsunami also helps come into play when we used it earlier. Crit Adrenaline, when you use it for this part, really does help you a lot in terms of getting more adrenaline available for P4, right? Right, like right around here, you know? So it helps you funnel in more adrenaline, and combined with the adrenaline potion from here, you can start P4 with as much adrenaline as possible. And yeah, and that leads, but yeah, basically, like, and that's also why we don't use wall magic earlier. Dumping all that adrenaline and damage too quickly is actually a little bit rough, and it's not really something that you could really count on, like, because it could probably mess you up in terms of optimal phasing into P4, and you'll end up with less adrenaline than usual for the start of P4. And either way, even if you started at 100% adrenaline, you still can't 100% pull off this rotation without at least one impatient proc. If you miss that impatient proc, you can't both use Tsunami and Gothic Staff in that order. And that order is important because that maximizes the amount of greater concentrated blast hits you can do. So that's a little bit rough there. And that's something to like keep in mind there for sure. Although that being said, in this case, we are trying to limit somewhat our greater concentrated blast. So it probably could have been somewhat okay, but like that was like the mindset I was going through when theorycrafting workshopping P3. But now we're moving on to P4. P4, this is the hardest phase in the entire fight, technically speaking. By the way, in the middle of P2 to P3, I did not move my cursor at all during P2. So like from P1 to P2, I did not move it. So like at the start of P1 right here, the cursor is right here. You see? I only move it at the end of P2, and this is to prepare for P4. So right around here, I move it by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units, and I end up right here. And this is important for P4. So right when we start right here, we do the usual Stonlock rotation with the 3 hits fixed, deep impact into 4-tick impact, and then we re-implement Statius Warhammer right here. This part is actually important. Pay attention to how I'm pushed out like that. This is actually really, really important. Like, if this doesn't happen, Font 2 is ruined. Like, I'm not even kidding about that. We'll go over that later. But, get pushed around like that. We use Deep Breath right there. And then 1 tick after using Deep Breath, then I click there to use Resonance and then Reflect. This is another case of like a pretty bad mistake here where I did not use Entangle at the right time. I used it a tick late. So this is not like a proper P4 of what you're supposed to do. So we will go back to here to like better show off like what a P4 should actually look like in general. Assuming this is like, you know, another correct one. So right here, target cycle the golem right here. And then you entangle and anti at the same time right there. And then you forward target cycle. Oh, that was a tick late there. Basically, my point is that you want to like entangle and anticipate at the same tick right here. 4 tick and entangle and rack at the same time. 4 tick and like deep breath there at the same time. And then do an ability right there. And then charge up your charge that up right there. And then release it with Ice Blitz and Rack, and then Impact, Surge out of there, and then all 3 of these guys just bounce. And you can just losslessly soul split, no problem whatsoever. Now, here's a problem with target cycling. Target cycling is also pretty quirky, and this can mess you up pretty badly as well. Now, what I mean by this is that, like, did you know that when you're rapidly cycling through targets, like when there's like a huge group of targets, there's like a window of time you need to do the next target cycle in order to move on to the next one before it resets, basically. So what I mean by that is, let me go log back in right here, and I will demonstrate with target cycling right here. So we'll go to the dummies right around here. So, right around here, we're gonna like keep spamming forward target cycle like this, and we cycle through those, all that. No problem so far, right? Well, here's the thing. What if I told you that like if you take too long in between target cycles, you go back to the beginning of it. So like, I want to target this guy, but I am super late on my target cycle right there. So instead, I just go back to that one, even though I've just been doing nothing but forward target cycling. This is a problem because if I'm super late on my target cycle is there, then I'll just go back to the original golem right here, and then I will not actually hit Telos, and then I'm just gonna be a sitting duck, and then I'll die because I'm suddenly just stunning a golem for no good reason instead of attacking Telos properly. So it's pretty rough, right, in that case. But thankfully, we can actually abuse that jank to our own advantage. Now, maybe forward target cycling is always going to work like that, but again, we can use that to our advantage using backwards target cycling. So, backwards target cycling, you can just like hit this over and over again multiple times. So it's like you do it over and over again, but we want to go back to the original one right here. We can wait a little bit longer and then hit backwards target cycling, and then we just go back to the original one. This is what I do in that P4, where after a little bit, like right here, go right around here, I do that, and I do a basic right there, and then I backwards target cycle into that, so I can guarantee I can get target Telos instead of the golems, because I wait that long and have that target cycling like window reset, and then I can just go from there. It's a little bit weird to explain. All I can say is that you should try it out yourself at Dummies in order to like see what I'm talking about. But anyway, so with that in mind, then you want to like just do the Sonic rotation as much as possible. So like, you release, detonate with Ice Blitz and Rack, impact into 3-hit fix into deep impact, and this is enough damage to force him immediately into the next font. Now, for those not initiated, you may be thinking, where's the rocks? Don't rocks exist at 1000% plus at P4? Yes, but they only appear after a special attack. If Telos never does a special attack, fonts don't count by the way, then rocks will never spawn. So your goal on P4, no matter what you are, no matter if you're speed killing or if you're doing challenge runs, your goal on P4 is to do enough damage and stun him long enough to the point where he does nothing, basically. And he can't summon rocks because he can't do a spec at all. So we do that 37.5k damage every cycle right here, and he literally just can't do anything right there. Now, next thing we need to do, we need to move the cursor again. So, in the middle of our stun lock rotation, excuse me, I'll be holding down control and then holding down like the cardinal direction west in order to go all the way to the border right here. And I'm guaranteed like always end up here, right? Then I will move it up by 3 units right here. So when I click right here, I will end up inside a font. So I move at the same time I use my debuff right here. And then I use Barricade. And then Preparation as like some weird filler ability to properly time when to backwards target cycle. And then start building Adrenaline again. And then I use 6 damaging abilities right here. So this is 5. And then this is 6. And then I charge up Detonate. This time I only charge it for 3 ticks. And then I release it. And then I do enough damage again. And repeat the same old strategy again, right? And then I do enough damage. And then here's the most interesting part about P4 right now. So notice how I just like run towards Telos like this, right? But then now I use the Cease ability to stop myself in my tracks right here. So like I just stop here completely. Now that being said, because I was trying to like constantly follow him around, like I was like line of sight right there. Just because I'm facing this way, it doesn't mean I will surge this way. I'll still surge diagonally like this. And this is perfect because that'll get us into font 3. So I cease 1 tick after that rack that will that will pull me towards this side. And then I use 2 abilities right here. And then I surge towards him. Then I do forwards target cycling. And then I click right here. And then I use rack to stop myself. and then use defenses right here. So Resonance, Reflect, Anticipation for anti-stuns, because sometimes Volcanics can be around here. In Font 2, the Volcanics generally don't actually hit me right here. It's rarer than not that Golems... it's actually pretty rare that Golems actually hit me on Font 2 right here. So I can afford to just not use Anticipation whatsoever. If that happens, then the kill will be a little bit lost, and that is a little bit more RNG than I like. But honestly, because most of the time you don't need to worry about Volcanics during Font 2, it's not really that big of a deal in general. So like, again, we go towards the font right here. We stop ourselves in our track with Rack, and then Resonance, Reflect, again, you know, Anticipation, then Devotion, and then one more ability, and then do a full charge of Detonate, and then release it. In this case, I think I actually didn't release my Detonate properly because I felt like I did like not enough damage as possible. So the sequence is actually, we don't do a full stun rotation this time, because you cannot equip any equipment in the middle of phase transitions. We want to make sure that we start off with the right equipment at the start of the phase. So we do a 2-hit asphyxiate right here, and then we immediately wild magic. Normally, this should be enough to KO him majority of the time, but in the cases where it isn't, I queue up a Dragon Breath to try to knock him out in one go. But as of course you can tell in this case, one LP left. Very unfortunate. Not much you can do about that. So then you follow up for Rack, and then he's dead. And then you move on to P5. Now, P5, very, very RNG, because you're blindfolded. You can't really course correct in terms of your... you can't really course correct your... the wrong beam. So if you end up, like, if you want to go right here, but the beam is right here, you can't really course correct from there. You have to pick a beam, and you have to live with it. So you have a 1 out of 3 shot of getting the right beam, which is the left one right here. And then you have a 2 out of 3 shot of getting the correct golems, which are either corrupt or pure golems. Oh, by the way, before I forget, the mouse movement for here is after in the middle of the P4 P5 transition, I will move my cursor all the way to the top left corner right here, and then I will do 6 units both cardinally and diagonally like this. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's how I'll end up at. So like, and that will be how it is. Oh, I did forget to bring up one annoying quirk with mouse keys as well. So you might have noticed during that time where I didn't actually end up at a place. Here's the reason why. So if you moved around the mouse like this, or if you just moved around the mouse using mouse keys, like the more granular thing, when you hold on control and then you move again, you travel much more. You travel far less than normal. Like, I'm not sure why that is. So like, if we move it like that, you notice that like that is nowhere near the length that you're supposed to travel at. You see, like normally that will like take me to the, like you can see how it takes me to the edge right, like that. But if you move it by like that, and then you do the control like that, it just messes you up like that. So you have to make sure that you do not press any of those mouse key buttons without hitting control. If you hit any of these buttons without control, consider your run completely ruined, and you probably have to start over, which is a little bit unfortunate. And as a result of that mistake, sometimes I had to restart quite a few attempts just because of that one little mistake. Basically, the only button on your keypad you can hit that you can have without control active is 5. Everything else is essentially instant death if you don't have control held down at the same time. Anyway, so like, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you end up right here. This is the setup required to allow you to enter the left beam at a very specific time right here. So you move at the same time as the resistance right here, and then you can end up in the left beam all the time right here. So right around here, getting the resonance a little bit 50-50. Like, this is a little bit RNG right here, because sometimes you can resonance a golem right here, and then you'll get instantly destroyed by Telos' magic hit. And there's not much you can do about that. And then right here, he'll attack after 4 ticks, and then he'll attack very quickly, like 3 ticks afterwards, because when the green beam, or the blue beam in this case, when that hits Telos, his attack speed is sped up by 1 tick. And he will attack much more quickly when the beam is touching him. And during that time where the beam was touching him, he was able to have 1 attack of sped up speed. That's a little redundant. But anyways, and because of that, I had to pray magic a little bit quicker that time. So pray magic there, and then pray magic again, 3 ticks after instead of 4 ticks after. And then it's normal timing once again. And also, I have changed up my action bar to equip my Blightbound and my Eldritch Crossbow EOF immediately with the press of 1 and 2 right here, which is very easy for me to reach over. And then I use Natural Instinct, Revenge, and then Death Swiftness, and then ECB spec, and then switch over to Darkbow EOF. This combust here represents Darkbow EOF. It's just that, when you look at this, of course, it's just that combust logo right there. And then after that ECB spec, I use Darkbow. I use Darkbow here. Somehow land my 2 hits. No, even with Crit Bloom on, this is actually pretty rare. Landing both hits like that with Crit Bloom on, that's pretty rare overall. So get that damage in. Barricade, equip all of my Serenic very quickly like that by hitting these 3 keybind as quickly as possible. And then keep spamming the Darkbow spec as much as possible. I tried to use my SGB spec, but I constantly kept misclicking. I always hit the 6 button instead of 5. It's either 5, it's either 6 or 4 that I press, which isn't really, really great. And I keep missing that. So I was not actually able to use my SGB, which is a little bit unfortunate. But it doesn't matter. We still managed to get that P5, and Telos is toast. And we all did it blindfolded. Now, that might be all there is to it, so you may think. No, there isn't, actually. There is actually, a little bit more, theorycrafting I did back in P4 and stuff like that I had to scrap. So, in P4, you might be aware of something called wraparound, where you go around, I'm gonna go right here. You, after font 2, you go from here to here, and you stand right here. You let the font 3 golems approach you from this angle. You surge over them. You entangle the golem that's the last golem right there, and then you move on to font 3, and then you can just take on Telos without any retribution from golems whatsoever. Now, this is much more difficult to do blindfold. Whenever I tried it right here, and when I tried my own setup right here, so after all my stun lock rotations right here, I would surge towards it and try to course correct by surging again. It does not work. I'm forced to tank all these golems at the font because trying to make a more proper setup to allow for wraparound was basically impossible, unfortunately. It was not very pretty. So that was one thing I've had to abandon in general. But in general, most of what I theorized at first was mostly worked right in terms of rotations. The most I've had to do for research in terms of blindfolded kills was I had to figure out how many units of distance I have to move my cursor using mouse keys. So, 6 units diagonally and cardinally east from P4 to P5, like 5 units up from from the end of P1 to P4 starts, moving the cursor all the way to the left, and then moving 3 units up for font 2 on P4. All that I had to go investigate with eyes open for a long time before settling on into like a better sort of deal right then and there, you know? Oh, yeah. A couple more things about P4 that I forgot to mention as well. So, you may have noticed that I used Excalibur right here, very, very soon. Once I use my Statius Warhammer. Now, it seems like that I didn't right click anything, but it's like, how are you able to do this? Well, here's the answer for you. If you have an unaugmented Excalibur, you can basically uh you can just you can click on it with the keybind right there, and then activate it right then and there with a keybind like that. That is not possible with the augmented version of Excalibur. You need to have an unaugmented version of this. So that's something that I have to buy. Thankfully, it's only 500 GP, but it's still something that you need to do. I need to do in order for this to work on a blindfolded thing, because trying to use an augmented version of it, impossible. But yeah, that's basically how it works right there. And that basically covers the majority of the stuff I want to cover with blindfolded 4,000% Telos. As I stated earlier, this took 46 hours in total from like beginning to end, from the theory crafting to the final execution. And it's definitely one of the hardest things I ever had to do in this game as like a challenge. But it was definitely worth it, because like I'm pretty sure this is one of like the only one of its kind here for like RuneScape PVM in general. And doing something that's like prestigious, well, back in the day as like 4,000% Telos, it's always cool to see. But yeah, that's really about it in terms of blindfolded 4K. I hope you learned something new, and if you got any more questions, you can, by all means, feel free to ask, and I will be happy to answer any of those questions whatsoever. So, yeah. Until next time, everybody. Bye-bye.